The law finally caught up. Every AAA gaming studio is in trouble. From Bellular News, let's check this out because I'd love this AAA gaming scene to receive their comeuppance because the greed is getting way out of control. Something needs to be done. Even to Steam with their gambling.
Welcome back, everyone. Today's video is a true bombshell for the games industry. This is one of those things that can have true impact, so let me explain. What just happened is the European Union just rewrote the rules on premium currency in games. Of course, that's the home of Ubisoft, of CD Projekt, of DICE, of...
Are they actually gonna do something about the fake money that they force on people in games to buy their skins and battle passes and everything? They actually gonna do something? I noticed this was a problem back in the days of browser games and Facebook.
Remedy and so many other companies. And make no mistake, the new rules that they have just laid out could change gaming utterly. Actually change the games that you play. So you know those bundles where you've got to buy more currency than the item that you want costs? Or perhaps the idea of limited time events, of no refunds and digital purchases. These are all being fought against by legislators. And when the EU takes action, it's a large enough block that it can reverberate around the world.
The EU taking action, that's almost as bad as if the United States took action. I say bad, I mean bad for the AAA companies. Good for us.
And as evidence, how's that USB-C charger on our phone working out? There's a lot to talk about. Strap in. This one could actually, honestly, be pretty f***ing good. Oddly enough, you've got EU legislation to thank for the standardized phone charger situation and for many, the ability to play ROMs on their iPhone. But now we seem to have EU legislation to thank for premium currency.
I didn't know that the EU was the reason that we were allowed to play ROMs on our phones. That's crazy. Well, I was always able to because I'm on Android, but it's crazy that they're the reason that iPhones are allowed.
Being threatened. So here's what went on. In September 2024, the EU proposed the Digital Fairness Act that was targeting all the practices online that make using digital services miserable. And in particular, it called out dark patterns in video games as one of the targets. And that's basically the gross manipulative techniques that trick and strong-arm money out of people, obviously especially applying to people who are not yet adults. And this is fairly weighty because in the EU alone, games are obviously big business. Revenues have been going up in the EU. Online game spending in 2018 represented 74% of turnover coming from online revenue and 83% by 2022.
Online storefronts in full-price video games is a scourge on the gaming industry, on the gaming scene. The day that they make that illegal is the day that I might get back into buying AAA games. I won't mind if they raise the price of AAA games if they take the storefronts out.
That's all of those fun, dark patterns actually working and getting digital currency money out of people. But those dark patterns target the most vulnerable people the most. And there's no one more vulnerable in the eyes of the law than children. Children who spend an average of €31 a month on online games, according to data from Video Games Europe.
Well, okay, it's saying children. It's not children, it's parents. It's adults that are buying this for their kids. Because they go in the store. I remember when I was a kid, I was wanting a toy. I was wanting a toy every time I went into the store. Not Robux or V-Bucks. What happened? Where did everything go wrong? Zynga on Facebook, Farmville. Parents were trained to do this and then they just passed it right down to their kids.
Well, that's actually went down from 2023. I guess that's good. Everyone's feeling a little bit of the economic pinch, but it's not stopped the EU from taking action to protect kids, basically, from predatory premium currency models. And in situations like this, there's often a great offender, right, that is held up as an example of something doing everything wrong. So you might wonder, is it an Activision game? Is it Ultimate Team from the EA football games? Maybe it was Roblox. No, today, it's a game about horses. It's called Star Stable. You've probably never heard of it, but if this all does turn out good, we'll have the horse girls to thank.
In my opinion, I think games that have storefronts in them at all should be rated M for mature. because you wouldn't let a kid just walk into a store with your credit card, would you?
This is Star Stable Online. It comes from a Swedish developer called Star Stable Entertainment, and it is the game that may have just rewritten rules and monetization in the EU. So yeah, thanks, Horse Girls. Now, it turns out that Star Stable just uses all of the premium currency tactics in the book, which makes it a pretty awesome example, right? Especially because it is targeted at a younger audience. So in March 24, the Swedish Consumer Agency filed a complaint with the EU-wide Consumer Protection Cooperation Network. That's a mouthful. And that complaint alleged that Star Stable Entertainment were targeting children and using harmful commercial practices that breached EU consumer regulations. Now, the findings corroborated much of those allegations. They found that the game made direct appeals to children in their ads, that they were using pressuring techniques like FOMO, which is particularly despicable when it's not, on adults, and there was a lack of transparency on purchases and loads more things. I mean, here's an example of one that's particularly rough. They were responsible for influencers promoting the game to kids without any disclosure of the spending risk. So, in short, it's bloody well damning. Star Stable Entertainment now have a month to address complaints and propose solutions with their game, but what matters for our purposes today is the Consumer Protection Cooperation Network, we can just call the CPCN. They have laid out what they want. So I'll spell it out via an example.
What I want it all removed. I want this game rated M for mature, and I want the storefront removed. Even if the storefront is removed, I want it rated M for mature, because too bad. You already screwed up by manipulating children. You're just gonna find some other way to manipulate children. Either make it M for mature or just shut it down. That's my opinion. I think that's what needs to be done. Because they're just gonna find a way to get around whatever regulations you put on them. Just shut them down. They fucked up.
This is what should happen in the ideal world. You, dear gamer, want to buy yourself a new horse. You see that your new horse costs 300 star coins. The store tells you that's around £5, so it just lets you buy 300 coins exactly. You buy exactly what you need for the horse, rather than the current bundles that exist of 200 coins or 400 coins, meaning that you always have to buy with some wastage, which just ends up giving the company more money. So in short, no obfuscation bullshit, no weird tactics. And worst of all for these companies, this will have them bloody well shaking. You'd have to have a refund policy, both for the coins and the horse. And none of this would be pitched as a limited time event where you have got to get the thing right now. So that's an example then of how these policies should be applied, and each is indeed a massive win for consumers.
Making it rated M isn't going to help at all, because a parent will just see that and be like, oh, well, kids play GTA 5 all the time. I don't see anything wrong with this game. It's rated M because it has a storefront. Oh well, I'll just let you keep playing. If they make Roblox rated M, kids are still going to be playing it. Just got to shut it down. Don't allow them to do these things. Yeah, I think Roblox is really, really bad anyway, even if you took away the storefront and all that stuff. Just letting kids get into online spaces with barely any control, if any at all, on what those spaces could be like, and you don't know who your children are interacting with, that's not good.
But that would not matter if this amounted to nothing. You could look at all this and think, right, so some Swedish horse game has got a slap on the wrist. No, it's more than that. This seems to have backbone. So here's the big important bit. These solutions are the backbone of what the European Consumer Organization calls key principles for trustworthy gaming environments. And these could cause huge problems for anyone who is using premium currency. When I say this could shake the foundations of the game industry economy, I absolutely mean it. So these, which I'm going to spell out for you, are the minimum requirements for purchasing and using virtual currencies in the EU. And what's neat is the philosophy behind them. So the CPCN considers these premium currencies as an equivalent to the real money that is used to purchase them. And that for them means that they are just as worthy of legal scrutiny. So you can see how that is in a way a mindset shift that
I disagree. I think that digital currency is way worse than actual real currency. Because real currency, you have it, you put it in your pocket and you have it. The digital currency in these games, it's stuck in that game, and you can't cash it out and get that money back. And they manipulate you into buying that currency that you can't use for anything except for that game that you're using, that you're playing. And then they hit you with, hey, I got a deal. All of these things are on sale right now for the next 2 hours. You better get it now or it's going away. Gotta get rid of it. I don't think the EU is doing enough. They're just gonna do something else to get around the regulations, like I've been saying.
It paves the way for actually treating these as they are. So just think about the last game that you played that had a premium currency in it. Whatever that game is, I want you to keep it in mind. And with that in your mind, I'm now going to go through the various different practices that this targets. So, prices for premium currency packs that are a little more than the available product. So you've got to buy extra coins, extra gems, whatever it may be. Obfuscation of how much currency is worth by always pairing currency with other items or multiple currency options. As an example, I think World of Warcraft may actually fall for that because it includes Trader's Tender in one of the new mount bundles.
Wouldn't like a battle pass fall under this, like all battle passes? Because you get the battle pass and you get unlockable stuff that you have to play to get. So you're paying to not even get anything. Plus it comes with stuff and it usually comes with the currency. So what they'll do is they'll just not give you the free 500 gold whenever you buy the battle pass. That's how I can see them getting around this one.
Another one, a complete lack of a refund option for making currency purchases or even for in-game items. So there would have to be a refund policy. That's something none of us are used to in these games. Also, FOMO practices to encourage buying. Those are going to be looked at, so some of those may no longer be allowed.
They're going to be looked at. Some of them are not going to be allowed. They'll just change it and do something else that they didn't look at. And they'll keep doing that over and over again. And this game may fail. This one may fail, but the next one's going to be even worse.
And all of these practices are now something that the EU can hold against developers and publishers. Even more so if the parental controls of said game are not up to scratch. So it's less a case of me saying, can you think of any game that falls into those categories? And it's more me saying, can you think of a game that doesn't fall into those criteria? It's fairly humongous, which might indeed be the point here. We know this is something the EU have been thinking about in other circumstances.
And they're doing it for kids games, I think. What about adult games that are rampant with kids, that just got kids all over them, like Call of Duty? Technically, it's rated M for mature, but I'm mostly seeing kids play that game.
Than just Star Stable. As an example, in September 2024, the European Consumer Organization published a report on popular online games. And in that report, they targeted Diablo 4, EA Sports FC 24, Minecraft, Fortnite, and a bunch of others.
Diablo 4 is rated M, is it not? Why are they going after that one? I thought it was just for kids. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe they're going after the M-rated games also, so that means like Call of Duty and stuff. And I hope so. I hope something gets done, because I've been sick of seeing kids crying about not being able to get V-Bucks when they go to Walmart. Mommy, 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 can I get some Robux? If you don't, I'm gonna throw a fit and destroy stuff and make you look embarrassing in the store. Make you look like a terrible mother. You're a terrible mother for not buying me Robux.
And it was all about how the virtual currencies work. They were not thrilled on what they found in those games, right? Because many of them, well, they did the same things that, Star Stable did that we do not like. And that straight up means we can say that Electronic Arts and Blizzard Entertainment are being directly targeted by this body. That really is something. So it's no wonder that the BEUC will be holding workshops to help European companies implement these new principles.
If they take away these storefronts from these games, Blizzard will fail. Blizzard will burn to the ground. That's where they make most of their money, is off of microtransactions and battle passes and things. Diablo 4, full price game. Storefront, microtransactions, battle pass, and everything. Diablo Immortal, free game. Same thing though. Overwatch, I think literally every Blizzard game at this point.
Because it seems they may actually have to implement them. everything that they previously thought was acceptable pretty much now isn't. And that, here's the shocking thing, that's not my commentary. That is what the industry response has been, so we know they are shaking in their boots. It ain't surprising the industry bodies aren't thrilled about this, and a big shout out to one of our Belgrade Games members, Neo Nebulosa, for directing us to this stuff. So, the European Game Developers Federation and the Video Games Europe, or two groups basically, they've published a joint statement that expresses their disappointment with the findings. Let's read their statement. Quote, "We are disappointed by the lack of engagement from the CPC network in creating these principles, which introduce new legal theories and misguided interpretations of EU consumer law that will create confusion and disruption for European customers." Sidebar.
I don't care. I don't care. The people that are fine with eating shit aren't gonna be forced to eat shit anymore. They're gonna have to find something else to eat. Some other kind of shit. Because we're all tired of eating shit. Here's an idea. Everything that they were forcing us to sell, or forcing us to buy, make it all free. Make us have to earn it with actual merit instead of how much we can spend of our hard-earned blood money. Blood, sweat, and tears money. You're paying your time for a fake skin in a game that's gonna have the servers shut down in like 6 years. You're just not gonna have any of the stuff that you bought. And they don't carry over to the next one that comes out every year. So what's the point?
Oh no, we're going to be disrupted by sort of annoying predatory stuff going away. What an awful disruption. Back to the statement. It will also present a challenge to the industry's future growth and could even deprive millions of consumers access to their favorite games.
The only people that are depriving millions of consumers access to their favorite games are these corporations themselves. This is the same company. Is this from EA? I think this is from EA. This is the same company that shut down The Crew and are currently saying, you never owned The Crew. You only bought a license to play The Crew. We can shut it down whenever we want. Same with any game that you buy. Oh, we have $900 billion? It's gonna cost us $500 million to keep this game up that everyone loves. We're gonna shut it down.
Now that last bit is the interesting thing. So understandably, right, these groups, representing the most powerful players in the industry, did quite like things the way that they were. Change is dangerous, especially to the bottom line, and especially change like this. But in a way, they're not inherently wrong. It is true that audiences do actually understand premium currencies by and large right now, and when implementing currencies, these companies were following, their best legal guidance, and now that guidance has changed. I guess just like how so many phones had like a bespoke charging cable until the rules just changed in the middle of the game. So now they've got to get used to these new rules. And what'll sting is the impact on their bottom line. They're not wrong about the potential impacts of all of this. Now, big companies like Ubisoft can probably absorb the costs of any legal challenges or damage from rebuilding their premium currency systems. They'll probably spend a whole lot to try and figure out ways around these principles.
Exactly what I was saying. Even if the EU, it took this long for the EU to do something and nobody else is doing anything yet, they'll just find a way to get around it, and then by the time the EU or anybody else discovers what they're doing, they'll already be working on a way to get around the new things that they're coming up with. These companies are multi-billion-dollar companies. They're already working on new ways to monetize everything that nobody's thinking of.
As for smaller companies, well, they may not find that so easy. But where things will be dramatic is the group's final warning, because it's the most threatening one. It's the idea that players in the EU may just be locked out of video games. They'd say with a game like Overwatch, right? That they would simply choose to geo-restrict access to the game rather than change their monetization model, or to just continue the game as normal and risk EU lawsuits. It could just be they look at the EU and think, you know what, we make enough from the States and other countries, we really don't need them. That being said, the EU population is kinda huge, Overall GDP is obviously a very, very flawed metric, but as an example, right, just Googling this here in 2024, the EU's nominal GDP was about 17.9 trillion and 1/6 of global nominal GDP, which is quite a lot of money, and a hell of a lot of that GDP globally will be in other countries like, say, China, where a lot of these companies will not be able to go in and directly monetize. That could actually mean that they will feel the need to change.
Why is China leading the gaming industry right now? Why are we letting this happen? Why did the West let this happen? Oh wait, no, I know why. For money! Money and power, that's all it ever is. I can't believe people actually defend these gaming companies. Corporations. Mega corporations, almost. I'm starting to think everybody who defends these corporations are just bots being paid by the corporations to do, like, online guerrilla warfare, as Ubisoft said.
And in a way, there are two wolves inside me who are fighting, right? I suppose one of them is the pragmatic wolf. The other one is the almost like the last vestiges of some sort of libertarian idealism that says, let the market decide. If the gamers do not like the bad practices, the gamers shall not partake in them, and the market will solve the problem.
That's not how it works when it comes to gambling and manipulation and currency. We'll let the market decide. What if we just let McDonald's put all the poison in their food? You think people are gonna stop going to McDonald's just because they don't know the poison's there? And they don't see the poison? I mean, they hear that the poison's in there, but they don't see it or taste it. McDonald's tastes good. I'm gonna keep going to McDonald's, I don't care. What if they were never regulated? That's exactly what would happen. I hear people say it all the time. I see people, it says on the back of the Monster can, don't drink more than 4 of these. I see people drinking like 6. Not saying that we should regulate Monster, I'm just using that as an example of, if you tell people something's bad, they don't care. They will still just keep hurting themselves.
And I wish that was true. But I feel there's almost a faux idealism in so much of that, because these psychological hooks, these psychological triggers, they do actually work. We're in a world where you can very easily make, I think, some sound enough, philosophical arguments very much against regulation and all of that. And I totally get that. I'm fairly sympathetic towards that in many cases. But the thing is, we've also got to be pragmatic. And a part of that is being a bit humble about the human condition. And the fact of the matter is, these practices are not popular. People do not like them. Yet, people's behavior does continue.
Probably about 10% of people who play games that have these storefronts buy stuff. And probably about 2% of the people that buy stuff hate the storefronts. And probably about 5% of that 10% hate the fact that they buy stuff. I have a friend who has a problem making purchases online. And whenever he brings up that he buys stuff in games, he's embarrassed about it because it's bad.
And these obviously are bad. And as people who enjoy video games, we see that as these types of practices derive more and more revenue, they then become what the companies focus on. And that is worse for the actual video games.
This is why I play like PS2 era, early Xbox 360 era games. And even earlier than that, because they don't have these bad practices in them. It was a niche market back then. I was playing video games at the end of you were a nerd for playing video games. And now everybody plays video games because everybody's been manipulated into the market.
Because I suppose in a way, how much of game industry revenue comes essentially from psychological manipulation and these various business strategies that are designed to rake in revenue in a way that's not like really tied to the experience of a game that you purchase?
I'd say it's probably about 70%. I can't think of any modern games now besides certain single player titles. Even some of those have online storefronts and microtransactions and battle passes and daily quests and things like mobile games have. I'd say if you include mobile market, it's probably more like 85%.
We've just seen the share of that increase and increase and increase. And it's no wonder that as that is increased, the rest of us have become less and less satisfied with games. So in a way, if this does hurt the revenue of a bunch of companies and unfortunately leads to a bunch of job losses because these types of practices are no longer viable.
How are these developers gonna feed their families? They're gonna go hungry if they can't work. If they lose their jobs. You're making slop. You're making shit. Go be a garbage man. Go clean up the streets. Go clean a park for money. Go get an actual real job. There are actually people defending this nonsense. We're tired of eating shit, so we're just not gonna eat shit anymore. We're not going to allow them to keep shoveling slop into our faces. I already stopped that a long time ago. I haven't seen a storefront in a video game in years.
Good riddance. Good riddance, absolutely. Let the companies fail, let those jobs go down. How we run things should be a dialogue between the private and public sectors, and in a case like this, I think it's an example of the public sector, right? The people essentially saying, we actually do not like this practice. We don't want this to be the rules of the game. We want the rules of the game to change, to be more robust. And yeah, the market will, once it adapts to that, find a solution. And if the new rule set is a better rule set, then that should be a net good. But of course, none of this will matter if there's no enforcement. Enforcement, because one country making a digital consumer policy often will find difficulty in enforcing it because you're just one little guy, Mr. Belgium, right? That's why even though Belgium has banned loot boxes, so many games simply just ignore that and still operate in the country. Like in World of Warcraft in the new raid, one of the bosses is basically a slot machine boss. We always have the joke that for the person in our team that's in Belgium, that boss just can't drop any loot. I don't know, there's an EU firewall or a Belgian firewall. That's a joke, but you get the point. As much as many people have kind of went, Belgium, you take him down. It hasn't really mattered because it's just Belgium, just one little guy. It's a bit different here though. And that's because the EU is, 26 other countries and also Belgium. In 2023, it was worth 25.7 billion euro in game revenues. That's a lot of revenues. And we know that their legislators are willing to take on the likes of Apple and Google when their rulings are being defied. They have done that. But more than that, the companies inside the EU are, part of a big global network, and that does mean that whenever USB-C cables become standardized in the EU, they then become standardized everywhere because of manufacturing limitations. I'm sure Apple would have loved to have continued just selling people lightning adapters in the States, but ultimately they seem to have saw the way the wind was blowing and made the big change to USB-C. No one wanted to have, of course, a whole factory just making EU-only phones. And again, thinking about the impact that would have had on the whole ecosystem of manufacturing partners, blah, blah, blah. So you can see how with hardware, it does kind of make sense. We can see, though, software examples where it's not really the same thing. It's not like you can just go and get an emulator for your iPhone in America, but you can in the EU. So the question then is...
Oh, you definitely can in America if you know how to work an iPhone. I mean, you can't do it base, but there are ways. After all, it's just a little computer. You can put emulators on anything, man.
Will developers want to risk losing a large slice of that EU-derived money? Or will they simply have to ship a cut-down and less exploitative version of their in-game monetization to European countries? If so, it puts them in a fun little dilemma where the American gamer may get a transparently worse deal than, say, the European gamer. And then you can say, well, compare your store to mine. My one is a bit more respectful, doesn't have as much FOMO, doesn't have as many tricksy bundles and things that basically feel like a scam. And that'll be a bad look.
And wouldn't you just be able to change your VPN location to be able to play the version of that game if you have the copy of that game from that country? Is that possible? Could that be workable? So you could have the better storefront stuff, which better means less of it.
That's the dilemma that these companies face, and in a way, it's all thanks to a game about horses. So, hero of the day, horse girls. I guess that's a thing. Okay, tell you what though, if you want another story, another big, grand, juicy story.
Well, all I gotta say is thank you, Star Stable, for being the worst of the worst, apparently, that kicked off this whole EU legislation thing. around these gross, manipulative online storefronts and premium currencies. I think it all just needs to go away. We need to go back to the PS2, Xbox 360 era would be the worst I would allow it. With when you got DLC and you got small DLC, I could be okay with that as long as there's no storefront trying to sell you all of that with ads, with pop-ups like, hey, we have DLC, you want to buy it? I think Borderlands 2 was the first game that I saw that kind of stuff in, and I thought it was disgusting. I hated it. I hated that it was trying to sell me DLC constantly. I really hated the fact that I had already bought everything and it was still trying to advertise it to me. I think 2012 is really when all of this started to get out of hand, and it just snowballed from there. Now it's an avalanche, an unending forever avalanche, and I'm just snowboarding right on top of that avalanche, man. See you in the next one.